There are fewer than 30 men in the world qualified to drive Formula One. A mere half dozen, perhaps, to win. At this moment, I'm inclined to think you're not one of them.
No, you want to. Keep up the good work, Stephen, and there you have it. There you go.
Hello, this is Desiree for F1weekly.com. I'm your in-depth correspondent.
Let's go. With the qualifying, Steve.
Welcome to F1weekly.com. My name is Clark Rogers. I'm the host of the program. I'll be joined by Nasser Hamid, my co-host. This is podcast number 792, June 10th, 2019. Nasser?
Thank you, sir. Seb goes through Miller time in Montreal. Great taste, less filling. Ray Stewart Piro is the brewmeister. And now back to Mr. Rogers, the Clydesdale of podcasting.
Thank you, Nasser. On today's program, the FIA stewards, their names are Larry, Mo, and Curly. I told you 2019 was crap, and was Renault giving us fake news? We need your contributions to keep this program on the air. Just click on the Support F1 Weekly tab on the front page. You know you want to. Quickly, we need to get to this right away. Nas, welcome to the studio. How are you?
Well, I am doing very good, sir. Thank you for asking. What a race, what a Grand Prix, and this race really proves that you need to jump on the LCH bandwagon, and you'll be happy every race weekend. But I have to say, Mr. Rogers, this race will be talked about for many, many years, just like Dijon-Prenois 79 and Imola 1982. Two of the best drivers of the generation put on a great show from the beginning to the end. Just what motor racing is all about. Really, really enjoyed the race. Winner on the track was the big loser, 5 for 5. 5-second penalty given to car number 5 left the 4-time world champion fuming, and who can blame him? Later in the show, we will share some thoughts from F1 Weekly listeners from across the globe. Nobody, not even LCH, is excited about this penalty dished out on Sebastian Vettel. But there is a flip side of the coin, but I'll let you rant and rave before we turn the 75 and listen to the other side.
Thank you, Nas. Well, I have to give it to Jean Todt. He said he wanted to hire some new stewards that would mix it up a little bit. So they volunteered our famous or infamous Larry, Mo, and Curly. And they did a great job. They did what they were supposed to do. And I appreciate every moment of it. So keep up the good work, gentlemen. Right in the eye, back at you.
Well, you know, Mr. Rogers, the problem is not the penalty. The problem is the rules we have. We've had these rules where you do some small mistake, you get a penalty. I mean, it's penalties galore, Formula One these days, and I really do not like that. Races should be won on the tracks and not the way things are going. But you know, what they should really do is, this is just my opinion. If you look at racing is like life. You know, it's our life, and it's like life. What goes around comes around. I mean, you know, they dished out a penalty on Lewis Hamilton, which I thought was utter BS at Spa, and he lost that win to Felipe Massa. I believe it was 2008. Okay? But look what has happened since then. Last year in Baku, Bottas had a late puncture. Lewis gets the win. This year in Bahrain, Leclerc has a mechanical issue. Lewis wins. Now, if you remember some years ago, I never ever thought a Formula One team will be as dumb as the move that McLaren made on Lewis in 2007 China and left him out in the rain when Kimi Raikkonen was going 7 seconds faster on wet tires. And then Mercedes called him into the pits few laps from the end in Monte Carlo. But, things turn around. And now he has a penalty, Seb has a penalty, Lewis is the beneficiary. So these rules should be tweaked, relaxed, and let racers be racers. Because, hey, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. One day you'll be the ball, the next day you'll be the Louis Slugger, and then you'll get to have dinner with Mark Knopfler. So that's what I say on this baloney penalty. But one cannot criticize people who are enforcing the law because, they have to go by what the rule is. Otherwise, it's a free-for-all.
Did I hear the word slippery slope?
Yes. If you meet Claire Williams, that's what you will hear in every sentence.
Well, first of all, I completely disagree with you. It was a fair fight all the way through. It's not like he had somewhere to go in that tunnel part of the track. And, well, let me see. We've only had one winning team in the entire season.
No, I'm not saying Sebastian was wrong, and I'm not saying that the penalty should have been given. All I'm saying, the rules are such that if you make a small mistake, and when I say you, does not mean Seb, I mean, these penalties have been dished out on Max Verstappen and all sorts of, we see this all the time. And that's where the problem is. If you're going to have like they gave a penalty to Seb and he lost his win, which he thoroughly deserved. And I will say this, that had they not given this penalty, I don't think Lewis Hamilton would have won this race. Now, he probably would have won the race if he had some room to go. But I think this was Seb's race and he should have won the race. But the issue is, if you have a penalty for certain things, then it has to be dished out evenly, regardless of who the driver is or what the circumstances are. And that's where my gripe is. I do not want to see races decided in courtrooms and boardrooms and legal cases. Races should be decided on racetracks, period. And you may still disagree with me. That's okay, Mr. Rogers.
Not only do I completely disagree, but the United States Constitution disagrees, maritime law globally disagrees, because when a law is implemented or enforced, the situation is assessed. All of the things that are touching that specific moment are assessed. It's not always a cut and dry case in the law. And that's why we have adjudicators and advocates, because it's always a different scenario. It should never be just an automatic penalty. And they were wrong. If the penalty was not implemented, I cannot believe that Lewis Hamilton would have had a temper tantrum and would have freaked out and moved the signs from the winner, who was the winner, by the way, Sebastian Vettel, to his car. See, my point is, if there was no penalty, there would be no topic of discussion, because that's how vague the violation was. It was a racing incident, and we've completely lost our place in the world as a whole. I am finished. All we have to do is call Flavio Briatore. He would have cleared it all up for us.
Well, yeah, but do keep in mind, when you watch as I was watching, and, they only show one angle when you're watching a live telecast. Oh, by the way, I subscribe to this F1 TV, and I have a feeling that Claire Williams is the webmaster. This thing is not reliable, man. It went off shortly before the start of the race, and I had to go on one of these, pirated websites to watch the start of the race, which I think I missed the start, I believe, by half a minute or something. But that aside, I have news for you. And I'm not defending the penalty. Trust me, I also don't like this penalty, and I wish it was not dished out, okay? But all I'm saying is, when they have these rules, and they have these stewards, they have access and information to a lot of stuff. Okay, a lot of camera angles, telemetry, this and that. And I don't think they just sit there and try to, it's like Max Verstappen. I've heard comments from his side, or even from him, that they are out to get him. That may be the perception, but I don't think they are out to get him. A driver who is very aggressive, which he is, And of course, it's very exciting to see him being so aggressive. He's going to get in more trouble than a guy who is, enjoying sleepy shores, if you know what I mean. But he's no Maldonado or De Cesaris. So that's where the issue is. So I really think they should, unless it's a boneheaded move, that there should not be any penalty. Because, one day, one guy is going to be beneficiary of a rule. It's like when the rain's hit, If the rain comes and you have just passed your pit, you're screwed for a whole lap, okay? And that's what I'm saying, Mr. Rogers.
The rain is not a good analogy. We have 3 clowns deciding who won the race. That's not right. It's not right. It's not right. You fine the team financially, but you do not take away from the passion that was exhibited on the television for the viewers. Because the problem is, he doesn't even come close to just penalizing Vettel. He penalized everybody at the race. That's my point. You cannot penalize an entire populace because you are so set on these rules. It's not HAL from 2001 Space Odyssey. We're supposed to have people making decisions for people. And everybody got penalized, not just Sebastian Vettel. The sport got penalized. And the problem is, they're in their little box and they forgot to take their little glasses off and look at the television and see, oh, we're not in Korea. Those are not mannequins in the audience. Those are people who need no penalties. That's the thing is, the penalty and the ripple effect of the penalty is so tremendous that it ruined not only the sport, but the entire 2019 season. The ripple effect of a penalty has to be dealt with within seconds. And if you're not capable of getting the big picture, do not get into the kitchen because it's too hot. I'm done. I'm happy. And I'm glad Fernando was not watching this.
Well, I got news for you. Once upon a time, I was watching live Japanese Grand Prix in Suzuka, okay? And Ayrton Senna da Silva clashed with his teammate, was able, in a corner, was able to restart his car and hunt down Alessandro Nannini, who was leading the race, grabbed the lead and win the race, and they threw the book at him, which cost him the race and a world championship just because he did not re-enter the track from the point where he had, left the track, which was the law, and I believe still is. So when you have these rules and you are in infraction, they will throw the book at you. And I can understand. I mean, it was very disappointing for everybody, and like you said, the whole sport has suffered. But why put people in a situation where you give them such rules that if this happens, you have to do this? You've seen the penalties that have been dished out in the last few years? Most of them have been ridiculous penalties. I mean, you and I come from the era where we still talk about a race that took place in northeast France, Dijon-Prenois, 1979. That's racing. You can't be dishing out 10 penalty points on René Arnoux and 15 on Gilles Villeneuve just for trying to do what they are supposed to do. So I think the problem is in these rules, not in these stewards, because if you're going to tell them this is what the rule is, it's like, I don't know if you've ever been in a courtroom, and as part of my job, I've been there many, many times, and people come and with all these sorrow stories, what happened in their life, this and that, a wife left or husband left, this and that. And the judge will say, I sympathize, I'm sorry. And then he will ask the question, did you sign this contract, yes or no? And the moment they say yes, that's when the hammer comes down, judgment is granted to the plaintiff. And it's one of those situations, even Lewis Hamilton, as a racer he is, did you see him enjoy this victory?
Yes, I did, actually.
No, not on the podium. He even grabbed Seb to get him on the podium with him on the top step. But let's talk a little bit about Seb's behavior. Now, this is the same guy who hit Lewis Hamilton in Baku a couple of years ago at a very slow speed, which would be called snail's pace in terms of a Formula One car. And when he was informed of the penalty, he said, "What did I do?" So like all great drivers and all great champions, he can do no wrong. And in Montreal, his luck ran out. And again, I'm not happy that they dished out. I think it pissed off a lot of people. And I mean, you can go technical on it. Like what I've said is like going technical, but I'm not going technical to enjoy Lewis Hamilton's victory or enjoy his misery. It's just they have put stewards. At least now we have racing drivers have stewards. I remember previously they used to have people from, I don't want to name countries, but they have never had I would say an organized motor race, and they were making decisions. So, and it was a lot of brouhaha about those decisions that came to the point that we have race drivers now. I think they need to really change these rules and bring in common sense, which you have spoken so eloquently about so far on this podcast.
Common sense, Ness. I mean, there is no common sense. The sport is a laugh. Ask Martin Brundle. He'll tell you.
Well, I am just glad to see you so passionate about a driver whose name does not start with F and ends with A, or last name starts with A. So that's very refreshing. Maybe a change is coming in the palatial studios of F1 Weekly.
No change.
You'll get over this, and I'm sure Seb will get over this too.
Oh, yeah. It's called Le NASCAR.
Yes, it got a lot of people talking. That's for sure. Even NASCAR drivers are tweeting about this penalty. And some guy, one of the IndyCar drivers tweeted, "I'm glad we don't have stewards in IndyCar racing." Well, they've had some issues also. I mean, these things happen. I mean, you're not going to have a season of no controversy. And as Robin Miller likes to say, hate is good. So maybe, this kind of hatred for FIA stewards or Lewis or whatever, this is getting a lot of airtime for Formula One.
Let me say one thing. If there's another Mercedes win, I guarantee that viewership is going to drop severely. Especially after this crap.
No, this kind of crap is not going to hurt, I mean, there's always controversies in other sports and, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. But man, the race itself was very good. I mean, Seb had this race under control. Lewis kept the pressure on him all race long. It was anytime you have a race where you don't know who's going to win the race for most of the race, it's an exciting race. And, last few years that has not been the case in Formula One. But, before, sounds like you have cooled down a little bit. So shall we do a little review of Collie?
Sure. I mean, it helped him out a lot getting pole position.
Yes, Collie was a case of Sam Cooke. A change is gonna come, and it sure did. Bastian back on top, his first pole position since his home race last year, in which he crashed while in the lead. Sad, but true. LCH split the Ferraris. Danny Rick, I'm shocked. Danny Rick was fourth, row 2, and this was Renault's best qualifying result since the 2010 Japanese Grand Prix. And Mr. Rogers has not even said arigato gozaimasu to Ricardo San. I mean, did you not notice that?
I noticed it.
But the penalty is all you want to talk about, huh?
No, I'm just saying, I like it when number 2 wins. It's great. It's beautiful. We're on our way to reverse grid any day now.
Yes. Row 3 was Pierre Gasly for Red Bull and Valtteri Bottas. First time Gasly qualified ahead of Max. He was victim of K-Mag's accident in Q2. Nico Hülkenberg was on row 4 with rookie driver Lando Norris. Lando did a good job for McLaren. K-Mag assured himself of Q3 by crashing in Q2, but he would start from pit lane. 13 was lucky number for Antonio Giovinazzi as he qualified in that position, beating his teammate Kimi for the second time. I believe it was second time this season in Collie. And the quiet man qualified 17th for Alfa Romeo. Local lad Lance Stroll qualified 18th for Team Papito. And of course, final row was dominated by L'Equipe Clairvoyante. George Russell out-qualifying Kubica by over 0.7 seconds, which is very, very sad for a driver who was headed to Maranello when he injured his mano in a needless rally accident. George and Perez are unbeaten in quali by their respective teammates. So, sir, what else would you like to talk about the race before the life-altering moment on, what was it, lap 48, I believe?
Nothing. I can't wait for Larry, Moe, and Curly to put out another short.
Well, being a big Renault fan that you have, and your Dios, Alonso, do you remember the penalty that was given to Renault team at Monza in the days of Schumacher versus Alonso? Do you remember that?
Oh, I do.
Now, that was a long time ago. Wasn't that complete, utter BS penalty, yes or no?
It was.
Okay, so this has been going on for a while. And we talked about Lewis's... Now, when Lewis was dropped off win at Spa, what had happened, if I remember correctly, he had left the track, re-entered, gave the position back to Kimi. Kimi got ahead of him, and Lewis was right behind him. And then they penalized him, saying not enough advantage was given to Kimi. And I already mentioned the penalty on Senna. So all of these, the Senna penalty was like, if you reverse in the pit lane, anybody and everybody who knows anything about racing rules, and I know very little because, I'm not a technical guy. I don't watch racing for rules and regulation. But everybody knows if you reverse in the pit lane, instant disqualification. And that was the same thing with Senna's situation, that, he went off the track and then just continued when the marshal pushed him. And that small mistake cost him a world championship. So not much when you can do when the law, it's like, if the speed limit on Highway 5 is 75 and you're doing 77, and not 130 like my friend who got a ticket and still complained. But if your speed limit is 75 and you are doing 78 and you get a ticket, what are you going to do? Piss and moan? Johnny's going to ask you, did you break the speed limit, yes or no? And when you say, oui, monsieur, there comes the yellow sheet, So I think Formula One will get over it. I think, the good thing is the next race is your home Grand Prix, French Grand Prix, and they have a long Mistral straight, and hopefully Ferrari will win there. But hey, given Seb's luck lately, maybe the Ferrari winner would be Charles Leclerc. What say you?
We had a winner. It was a Ferrari in Canada.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, drivers have asked for this themselves. Okay, now check this out. Before this lap 48, life-altering event took place for you, Sergio Perez passed Romain Grosjean with some rubbing and scrubbing. Both were able to continue. And what did Romain Grosjean did? He immediately radioed his team for race control to review it. So these drivers are complaining all the time. So there comes the Johnny Law. You did not give him enough room. You cross across. And you know what? What was in Seb's mind? I don't know. But I do know one thing. There's one thing a racing driver does not want, is to lose a race. So when he went off course, whether he came across intentionally or not, I don't know. I cannot get into his head, nor do I need to. But I am sure as soon as he got off the track, his first racing instinct would be, preserve my lead. And what is the best way to preserve a lead, Mr. Rogers? I can't hear you.
Go straight.
No, you go straight, but make your car as wide as possible. Now, let me ask you a question. How would you have felt if Alonso was driving this car? What would you do in that case?
I would have probably called the police.
Call French police or Santa Clara PD?
Santa Clara.
Okay, that's good. At least you're realistic. But, when all is said and done, I am not sure if this, Ferrari's even going to file a complaint or protest or whatever. Appeal is the word. But they should know better that these time penalties, there are certain penalties that cannot be appealed. But I think they will raise hell. And when Ferrari raises hell, people do listen. But I don't think this will result in any immediate modification in FIA procedure in handling such incidents. But, I have an idea. It's just, common sense approach. This could be written, a rule could be written as such. Unless the action of a driver is elevated to a Maldonado moment, there will be no penalty. What say you?
That's fine. I'm done. I'm getting tired of the whole thing now.
Why is that? Just because Nando is not winning?
Correct.
You know what the Lewis fans was thinking in Canada or singing? They instantly wrote a new song there. Karma comes to Canada. Oh, by the way, talking of karma, Julian Palmer does the podcast on BBC. Oh boy, if you want to get more fired up, listen to what he has to say about the set penalty. That will really get you going more than double of what you're going on right now.
Well, luckily I don't listen to any other podcasts.
Mr. Rogers. Okay, sir. Your views are shared by all, including our listeners. So we come to a segment called Listener's Lamentation. Would you like to begin the proceedings, sir?
Absolutely. Benedict Schneider from Switzerland says, never mind the penalty, but Hamilton had his DRS wide open just before Seb's off. Twice DRS open going into the second quarter. 1/3 of a lap after the DRS zone. And I don't know about the penalty. A reprimand would have done. What else was Vet to do? Ham should have gone left, and he could have easily overtaken Vettel. At least some controversy in this dog of a season.
Okay, sir. Next comment is from Emery Young from South Carolina. I would not penalize Seb like that. Penalty should not change final order. Make him give up position in the race and fight it out again. Liberty will have to do something with F1 to make it interesting again. And this is an interesting point that had they asked Seb to give up a position, there was quite a bit of racing left. That would have been very, very interesting. But just, I think, just my thinking, I may be wrong here, but I think if they had done that, I don't think Sebastian Vettel would, or anybody in his position would have given up the position. What do you think?
I'm not going to comment.
Oh, going PC now.
Absolutely.
Okay, carry on.
Dr. Mark Farrington from the UK. From the time of crossing the grass, he wasn't in proper control of the car. And surely, therefore, they couldn't expect him to be able to slow or to steer left to give Lewis more room. If he'd attempted either of those, he might as well have hit the wall and taken Lewis with him. He kept the car on the road and moving in a more or less consistent direction until he got grip. And Lewis recognized that and aborted his attempt at a pass. I expected better from Larry, Moe, and Curly.
Larry Carter from Chicago, he was the one that went off, so it's his responsibility to control the car. Where was I supposed to go? Hey, don't overdrive and go off in the first place. What say you, Mr. Rogers?
Incorrect data. Dr. Miguel from Portugal says, do the rules take intentionally into account? Did he rejoin the track in an unsafe manner? Yes. Did he mean to? No. He doesn't look like it, but he did make a mistake, and Lewis was close enough to have taken the lead had he not squeezed out. So in the end, sportive truth prevailed. Sacre bleu.
And now Toby Dawes, F1 Weekly webmaster from upstate New York. Ferrari and Sebastian were robbed of this top step. I think that while I agree with Jensen in post-race on Sky F1 that the rule is there and the FIA stewards are obliged to look at it, especially after Toto and Mercedes would more than likely have expressed their thoughts, I find it hard to understand why and how a penalty is justified.
Robert Schwartz from Colorado, USA. The call that was made by the stewards was incorrect. Vettel made the error running off the track, but was simply a passenger after that. You can see him struggling to keep the car under control and was lucky not to hit the wall. He did not intentionally impede or block any move made by Hamilton. It was a racing incident. This was a bad call and robbed what could have been an exciting finish to the race.
Signor Pat Scopelliti in New York. Formula One has lost sight of the purpose of rules. Vettel was struggling to get control of the car and certainly showed no intent to block Hamilton. Being a narrow street circuit, where was he supposed to go? Imagine if they had been at Dijon in 1979 trying to rule on Villeneuve and Arnoux. Officials should always have a feel for the sport. Today, they did not.
Carlos Santander from Florida. As a Ferrari fan, I was upset. As an F1 fan, I was upset. To me, it was a racing incident. From the outside, it looks like Vettel positioned his car to block Lewis and push him to the wall. But if you know racing and know Canada, you know turn 3 and 4 are tricky, and to control the car while on the grass is difficult. I think once Vettel was on the grass, he was lucky to control the car back in. Any power to the rear wheels or oversteer would have spun his car. I think he did the best he could, and they robbed him of a race.
Our friend Louis Jensen in Netherlands writes, everything that is wrong in F1 is in this stupid decision. I understand that something that Senna did in 1990 in Suzuka to Prost should be punished, but there should be a level of culpability. Doing it in a way that you are sure that it will put your opponent in the wall. That is not what Seb did. There is no culpability in his actions. He tries to bring his car back on the track. Nothing he does is aiming towards putting Lewis in the wall. So the penalty is unjustified.
Lamborghini race car driver Axel Jeffries. For me, any real racer would have done the same thing Vettel did. I'm sure Lewis would have done as well. I don't think it deserved the penalty, as that killed the whole spectacle. Was Vettel in control? I believe he was. But that's another topic. That's hard racing, which F1 needs to be honest. If anyone deserved a penalty, it was Daniel Ricciardo for moving several times along the straight at high speeds against Bottas.
Our man in New Zealand, Gerrit van Asch, writes, not big fan of these penalty as it did spoil the race, and it was very unfair. The racing has not been the greatest this year, and good fight gets spoiled by this, and this opens the door for a lot complaining going forward if somebody is doing something similar. The stewards are inconsistent this year, but with these decisions, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose.
Gabriel Rosencotter from Pennsylvania. The stewards gave the smallest penalty allowed to them. Hey, it could have been a drive-through. And that left Seb and Ferrari to find a way to build a 5-second lead. I'm not sure whether Seb's tires finally went off, Lewis turned up the engine, or Seb just got grumpy early. I think he made a poor choice in stepping out of the normal podium finisher protocol, and a worse choice in switching the first and second bollards around the vehicle. Keep up the good work, Gabriel.
And our man Gabriel was in Montreal with his entourage, and hopefully we'll get some photos from him. We would like to thank all our listeners in sharing these thoughts with us on a short notice, so that is much appreciated. And Mr. Roger, shall we take a break so you can get your favorite Gatorade with Tahrain Karthikeyan?
Yes. Thanks, Nas. We'll be back after these brief messages.
Are you in business and want to make a hard-hitting visual impact that gets your name and message promoted? F1 Weekly knows from experience that the creative team of Katon Designs are graphic design geniuses and a company that can give your brand a visual pop in a cost-effective way. Contact Katon Designs at katondesigns.com for visual messaging solutions that get your business image seen.
Welcome back to F1weekly.com. Clark Rogers here, your host. And now, as we spin the globe and go around the world with Motorsports Mondial and the king, the Swami himself, Nasser Hamid.
And sir, before we leave Montreal, some more information from there. I don't know if you notice, no Rich Energy logo on Haas F1 cars in Montreal. The legal beagle has landed at Haas team. Per request of sponsor Rich Energy, their stag logo was removed from the cars. Rich Energy lost the legal case against White Bikes over copying their logo. They are now appealing the court decision in which the judge called company CEO William Story and his crony who designed the logo as not credible. On a more serious note, yes, sir?
No, I was just going to mention, obviously, guys, no Rich Energy needs to contact our boys over at Katon Designs. Get a killer logo for half the price.
On a more serious note, Red Bull and Ferrari have been asking Pirelli to revert to the 2018 tires, but they would need at least 5 more teams to support them, as this kind of changes need at least 70% support to happen. Last year's tires were criticized for generating overheating, while this year's tires have a smaller operating window. Red Bull and Ferrari believe that tires are key to understand why Mercedes has been so dominant in 2019. And on some sad notes, note Mr. Rogers, Robin Hurd, who was the R in March designer, he passed away, and it was very sad to hear his passing away coming so soon. After the passing of Niki Lauda, he used to work in aerospace. Actually, he was working on the Concorde project in the 1960s when Alan Rees called him, who was the A in March, and asked Robin to come and design the first McLaren Formula One car. So another piece of motor race history has now passed away. In F1 fake news, we've heard stuff like Sebastian Vettel will retire, which he's saying is nonsense. Hülkenberg to Red Bull, which Pierre Gasly is saying nonsense. And of course the news is that Pierre Gasly will get Isaac Hayes' CD from Dr. Marco for Christmas. So let's see what happens. War of words has erupted between Red Bull and their new punching bag, Pirelli. Both Christian Horner and Dr. Helmut Marko complaining about the 2019 Pirelli tires and asking Pirelli to go back to 2018 tires. Horner said 9 teams will be happy and 1 not, referring to Mercedes, of course, and Dr. Marko was, typical, more complimentary, calling the tire change stupid, which did not go down very well with Pirelli people. Okay, Mario Isola, who is head of Pirelli Motorsports, responded by saying that the tire warm-up is a performance problem, not a safety one. Now we come to your favorite topic. 2 Trustafarians in F1 next year, both from north of the border, Reports are circulating that Nicholas Latifi's Papito might buy him a ride at Williams next season. Papa already owns a big stake in McLaren, and feeding Nick's F1 frenzy is no issue, courtesy of family's Sofina Foods business. But wait, there's more. Russian Nikita Mazepin may be the 3rd Trustafarian in 2020. Currently, he is doing private testing with an old Mercedes F1 car, a leaf he borrowed from the Stroll family tree. Man, I'm just glad Bill Gates' boys are not interested in Formula One. Otherwise, half the grid will be filled with billionaire bambinos and bambinettes. Now, moving on to other motorsports news, we go to IndyCar racing from Texas. Did you watch any of the action there, sir? Night race?
Absolutely. Caution, and caution.
Satosa on pole for Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan team. The race was a Saturday night fever in DFW area at the Texas Motor Speedway. In a typical close finish, Joseph Newgarden, man from Tennessee, beat Alexander Rossi to win the race. Graham Rahal was 3rd for his team Papito. Santino Ferrucci, who made a mess of himself in F2 and was kicked out by his team, was an impressive 4th for Dale Coyne Racing. So that's a very good job by this kid. Misano Adriatico circuit for DTM, Marco Wittmann started from the pit lane, won the opening race of the weekend for BMW. Second race of the weekend saw 4 Audis in the top 5. Winning driver was Swiss Nico Müller. Ducati's MotoGP star Andrea Dovizioso was 12th in the first race and 15th in race 2. Girl power, they were also in action at Misano. English lady Jamie Chadwick won her 2nd race of the season to retake championship lead. Okayama in Japan, round 3 of Japanese Formula 3. Sasha Fenestraz, who is racing as a French driver but grew up in Argentina, took race number win from 6 events so far this season by winning the opening race of the weekend. Inam Ahmed, F1 Weekly friend, jumped the start to take the lead, but a drive-through penalty evaporated any chance of scoring points. And Mr. Rogers, I understand you're sizzling in the palatial studios because the temperature is over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'll try to go quickly on Le Goodieback from Montreal. It's a new track record for Sergio Perez, driver with the most starts, 162 without a pole position. Now lonely on number 2 is pretty boy Floyd Johnny Herbert with 161 starts and no pole. Also in this group, drivers with more than 100 Grand Prix starts and no pole position, we have a driver who almost became world champion with Ferrari, Mr. Eddie Irvine. Canadian Grand Prix marked the 150th F1 start for Romain Grosjean. Longest race in Formula One took place here in 2011 in the rain and taking over 4 hours to complete. Shining all the way from the back of the grid to win the race was JB. His epic pass on Sebastian Vettel on the final lap was reenacted by F1weekly webmaster Toby Dawes and yours truly when we visited the Gilles Villeneuve circuit last winter. Famous maiden wins in Montreal. Daniel Ricciardo, the Aussie mate, rattled the cage of Sebastian Vettel when he joined the 4-time world champion at Red Bull. The score that season was 3-0 in favor of the Smiling Assassin, also known as the Honey Badger. First of 3 wins in 2014 for Danny Boy came at Montreal. Now we come to Lewis Hamilton, Formula One's official poster boy of cage rattling. Scored his first Grand Prix win here from his first pole position in 2007. That's when the host of longest-running F1 podcast, Enes Diaz, Nando started listening to Michael McDonald singing, "I keep forgetting things will never be the same." And that was Polydor Zinger of the Day. Now we come to Robert Kubica. His day of days came in 2008 when he scored his and Team BMW Sauber's first and only victory in Montreal. His teammate Nick Heidfeld was second. DC completed the podium for Red Bull. Now we come to new and maiden motivation and feelings. Teardrops rolling down his face on his birthday and on the cool-down lap. Monsieur Jean Alesi becomes a Ferrari one-hit wonder in winning the 1995 Canadian Grand Prix. And as William Shatner once said, better to be a one-hit wonder than no-hit wonder. And finally, we have the much-missed and much-loved local lad whom the track is now named for, Gilles Villeneuve, winning his first F1 race in Montreal in 1978 in his beautiful Ferrari 312 T3. And now we come to finally famous last words. Daniel Ricciardo appeared on Nico Rosberg's podcast, which you can see and listen on YouTube. And he was talking about when he was racing in World Series by Renault, in which he finished second to Mikhail Aleshin many years ago. And he said he had injured his wrist before the preseason testing, but as a good trooper, he showed up at the test session, drove a lap or two and was unable to carry on the testing at Jerez. So Dr. Marco, who was not there, was informed about the situation, and he called Danny Rick and asked him what happened. Ricciardo explained to him, and the only thing Dr. Marco said was, "You're an idiot," and hung up on him. There you have it, Mr. Rogers.
Nas, keep up the good work. I just got a text message from the stewards. The podcast will have a 5-second penalty.
Wow. And who will be the winner? Clark Alonso?
There's only one winner in your world, Nas. LCH.
Okay, I have to ask you your favorite question. What's your prediction for Paul Ricard?
Lewis will win, even though he'll come in dead last. Everybody else will have a penalty.
Oh, boy.
Any other penalties?
Yeah, I'll tell you the penalty that is coming. I think there's a penalty coming at the end of the season for Lewis Hamilton's teammate from his own boss.
Indeed. It's called chop chop penalty.
Exactly. Chop chop, back to Williams.
No, you have to have billions to go to Williams now.
Yeah, excuse me. You are so correct, sir.
Yes. So anyway, I want to thank all the listeners who put up with this crap. Thanks for listening. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.